Oh, no joke. Hold up. First, I'm going to check to see if I'm actually live. The huge. And then after that, I need to get my glass. Because I had a glass of water, but I forgot to bring it into the freaking room. That's bloody... First, someone check to see. Yeah, we're good. So, what up, what up? What up, guys? Welcome to another live by my star. My stiddy. My stiddy yitty. My star. So, today, I'm going to go through a few topics, honestly, in all honesty, in all truthfulness, because I've been getting to the more deeper into the conclusion of the less structure, the less, how do I say, the less direct, the less formed that I leave my videos, the more impactful and powerful they seem to be from my perspective. Obviously, you know, like, love to hear you guys' opinions. So, when I first started making videos, right, I initially had this concept in my head because of a Taurus, well, Gemini Taurus cusp. Initially, I had the concept in my head that, okay, I need to have that stability, that practicality. And don't get me wrong, I still think that that is a good thing to implement into my videos. I don't know why I give a fuck. Like, bitch, if you know what I said, you know what I said. That's one thing I hate when people say, like, they correct you, like, when they correct you for certain words. I always say that. I'll always call people out when they say that. Like, well, maybe not always, but majority of the time I'll call people out. I'm like, you understood what they said, right? So why the fuck are you correcting them? If you can understand what they said, and they can understand what you said, and they can understand what you said, I don't ever see a reason to correct someone, regardless, even if the words sound so stupid, but you know what they said, right? Okay, so in my mind, it's like you leave it for the situation for when it's not known. Otherwise, you're just like looking for a way to kind of correct someone, and that's how I could tell as well. Like, you might have a little bit of an ego, and I'm speaking from experience because I used to be that bitch to correct people sometimes. And then I got older and I was like, wait, why the fuck am I correcting people when I know what they're saying? Like, that makes no sense. Because, like, bitch, I know what you're saying. So I just, in my head, you know, you can think of as many excuses or reasons to why you can correct someone because when you know what they're saying. But like, to me, it just doesn't make sense. It just makes no sense. It's just like, bitch, you know what they said, so move along, you know, like, anyways, that's a little tangent for you guys, a little Gemini tangent, a little taste of that Gemini flavor, right? So my Taurus side is like, bitch, we need to streamline this shit, like, need to get the direct ass point, like, you know, just be blunt, be straight to the point, charge towards it like a bull. Then my Gemini's like, bitch, let's swerve, let's do a curveball. Let's do a curveball. So obviously when I like I was saying, I would still have that practical quality implemented in my videos, which is why I like to do the little thumbnail. I'm gonna be real. I don't even give a fuck about the thumbnail half the time. That's why I don't really like keep it consistent. You know, those YouTubers, they like keep their thumbnail like the same like kind of theme. I kind of did that like for like the what's it called? that little series that I'm doing of lessons on law, but that's because like that's the same kind of thing. They're the same kind of series. Other than that, I do not give a fuck about continuity with my thumbnails. I don't give a fuck if you recognize my thumbnails just from the look of it. You know what I mean? And I feel like even so, in doing that, you're gonna recognize them because you're gonna be like, bitch, who the fuck's thumbnail's that? Oh, it must be my stars because that's what I say every single time I see my stars thumbnail. What, like, who the fuck is that? Like, what the fuck is that thumbnail? Like, bitch, because you ain't seen, like, you don't really look. What, whose YouTube videos do you see the thumbnail that looks like mine? Like, pretty much nobody. Seems like everybody on YouTube uses the same kind of thumbnail program, and then there's me. Like, what the fuck program do you use? I use Canva if anyone wants to know. And I just freaking just put together whatever I think looks good. Sometimes I'll sit there, I'm like, that doesn't really seem professional. But then I'm like, I don't give a fuck because what is professional? That's a man-made concept. Like, I don't like to adhere to man-made concepts, babes. Only man-made concept. Nah, jokes. No, let me not get into that. Like, let me not get into that. So when it comes to that energy, obviously I still want to keep that consistency, that stability, that Taurus practicality quality when it comes to my thumbnails and having like a title, you know, because that gives that like sense of stability, that sense of preparation, that sense of that earth quality, you know, that fixated earth. However, as an overall concept, I don't want to adhere too much to rigid guidelines and structures because that actually restricts my creativity, my expression, because I can get real creative with a whole bunch of different topics, you know, like I don't just have to talk about one single topic. Or if I do talk about one single topic, I'm like many different like avenues and ways of thinking about that topic. I think that might be my Gemini, also maybe my Sag. So when I do, I notice that I'm more free. I'm able to express myself. I'm able to be in more of my true state of being. And that allows me to be in more of a godly state, you know? And people be like, oh, godly, like, but the bitch, what the fuck kind of ego do you have thinking you're in a godly state? Bitch, no. When I say godly state, I just mean I'm in my true state of being before getting lost into my mind, my body. I'm just being. That's basically what I mean when I say my godly state. I'm just being. I'm just existing. I'm just expressing my individuality, right? That's just what I'm trying to reference when I say godly state. So don't get twisted in your head and think I'm in some ego when I say godly state. Baby, maybe you're in an ego if you fucking thought that. Maybe you are getting an ego minded about what the fuck God means to you. Thinking that it means some kind of fucking individual kind of, like, I don't know. Anyways, don't even. So, that might be for someone, you know, I roasted someone, that's necessary sometimes. Sometimes you gotta fucking roast people because they just be so stupid and you just need to let them know what the fuck is up. Anyways, yeah, the more I seem to get into that state of being where I'm tapping into my true state of being, my godly state where I'm not attaching to an outcome or expectation or too much of a rigid guideline, that is what allows me to actually bring forth some of the most beautiful, some of the most profound, some of the most meaningful videos. So the more I make videos, the more I'm starting to stray away from that whole, like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, you know. I even noticed a little bit there, I started to get a little bit into an ego, but I pulled myself out real quick. I was starting to get into this ego where I was thinking to myself, okay, my videos are about this. No, bitch, my videos don't have to be about shit. You know what I mean? But I had that little moment where I was like in an ego and I was like, my videos are X, Y, and Z. It's like, bitch, like that's an ego. That's a concept that my mind is getting trapped in. And that's going to restrict me in the long run from actually expressing my true state of being. And I don't fuck with that. So if anything, that's the one thing that my videos are about. That's the one thing I would make an ego about. my videos are about being in my true state of being. So if any time you see me kind of getting disconnected from that, I'll be making a video like this a few days later talking about how I pulled myself up on it. But highly likely that this won't even happen again, because I've already gone through that. I've already started to actualize and realize that for myself and be aware of this concept. So now next time if I ever see it, even if it's in a small form, I'll just be like, bitch, I already know. And I'll fucking nip it in the butt before it even gets to this point. You know what I mean? So that's how you should really do shit. Because otherwise, you're just going to keep getting lost and keep going, why the fuck did I do this? Oh my gosh, I made a mistake. And bitch, like, fuck making mistakes. You make it once and then you move the fuck on. It's like people say, don't be sorry, be better. The fuck? So, when I was going for my little night walk tonight, I had a freaking million things come through my mind. I love that so much, because I noticed the more you kind of constantly pay attention to things, constantly being aware of things, like whatever it is. Could be something online, it could be about like whatever. And then you kind of take that time to just go for a walk and just be with your own self, be with the environment. And you really start to notice all of the ideas start pouring in, all of the concepts start pouring in. And that's actually one of the reasons why I even fell in love with walking in the first place. Because for me, when I go for walks, it really helps me to, well, actually, that just reminded me, because my third house is in Gemini. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, it's like Gemini, and then it's on the cusp of either Cancer or Taurus. And so, for me, I interpret that as like, I'm able to tap more into that Gemini kind of mind, aka being mutable and adaptable to my own and others' ideas, ways of thinking and communicating. When I go for, like, example, for walks around the neighborhood, because the third house can represent like your neighborhood, those kind of energies. So kind of things that you're familiar with, but they're not your immediate environment. And that's like the third house kind of energy. So when it comes to me going for a walk, that's probably why I love walking too, because it taps me into my third house. And it really gets my gears going, my mental gears spinning and cogging and blah blah blah. And what's it called? Led me to the idea. Well, actually, a few ideas. There's quite a few, mate. But one of the main ideas that I was thinking was like about Australia and New Zealand. Like, Australia and New Zealand is literally like siblings, man. Like siblings. Like, let me explain for people who are not from Australia and New Zealand. With Australia and New Zealand, it is like its own two like little like bubble, like a little world bubble type thing. So like, obviously you have America. America's big like influence in the world when it comes to media and pretty much anything to do with like people paying attention to media, music. I guess those are the same thing, but you get the idea. Big influence when it comes to that, you know? So I feel like in a large general sense, everybody's under the bubble of that American kind of influence or culture, regardless of where you're from. You got people in the Philippines who literally, like, they do this thing. I don't know, like, because my stepdad, he watches these Filipino videos. They always do this thing. They go two joints. I don't even know what the fuck it is. But I asked my stepdad, because he's been to the Philippines. I was like, what are they saying? Why are they saying two joints? Like, they go like to someone who's from overseas. They're like, two joints, two joints. And I was like, what is that? Like, and he said that it's because they've been watching too many American movies. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe somebody from America might know the reference, but I have no clue what the fuck that is. But you get the idea. big influence in the world. And when it comes to Australia and New Zealand, we have our own little bubble where Australia and New Zealand have like influence on each other. It's like a different kind of thing where I guess probably because both of us are under the Commonwealth, but even that, like, that's arguable because think about it. Everything bends in from the mental to the physical, from the spiritual down to the physical, right? So when it comes to the Commonwealth, that's just a physical representation of what's already happening on a mental and spiritual level. So the fact that Australia and New Zealand are still part of the Commonwealth, that's just more of a physical explanation to why. But spiritually, there's something going on that's deeper. And that's what I wanted to do this video for. It's like, even the accents, all the way down to the accents, our vowels. So in Australia, the vowels is flipped. So instead of saying, like the way I speak is I usually generally use Australian vowels. So the way I say it is like it's like A-E-I-O, bruh, O-U. So those are like Australian sounding vowels, right? Actually, that's not a good example because in New Zealand the vowels sound similar if you say them like that. So when it comes to E and I in Australia and in New Zealand, they're both flipped. And it's something that always plays on my mind. For months, I've been thinking this, like maybe even over a year or something, maybe even longer. But in New Zealand, like let's say you would say six. So they would say six, as in the number six, right? Americans, I don't know, you guys say like six or something, six. So, but in New Zealand, it's six. So it's kind of like it's almost like a U sound, six. You know what I mean? So, and then in Australia, you would say six, but that's like a real thick Australian accent. Generally, most people like me, I would just say six, you know, but you can still hear that e, like that e, and it almost sounds like an E, right? So when it comes to the E itself, that's a whole different story. Like in New Zealand, you would say next. So see, like you'll see if you're paying attention, you probably see a theme here, right? The A and the E and the I is flipped, right? So next would be next in Australia. Next. And that almost sounds like the New Zealand I, which is so it's like the is the E in Australia and the is the I in New Zealand, and then vice versa. The E is the E in New Zealand, and the E is the I in Australia, you know? So, for example, you'd say in Australia, you would say next, right? And then you would say, oh, this is the real common one actually. They say Jif, like this freaking cream cleanser product. I don't know if you guys have it anywhere where you're from, if you're watching from another part of the world, but Jif is how they would say it in New Zealand, Jif. And I always used to make a joke about this when I was a kid, actually. Jif. And then I would say, so, like, with Jif, if an Australian was saying it, it would be like Jeff, which is like the name Jeff. It's like freaking confusing. Now, like, the more I talk about it, the more confused my mind kind of gets. I'm like, what the fuck am I saying? But if you're following along, you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. The vowels are flipped, right? So that's just one little small thing, but that is not even the main thing. Like the vowels being flipped, that's like pretty minute, but it's an interesting thing to pay attention to, right? Also, they were both the last two countries to be colonized. Granted, like probably the last two, if I'm not mistaken, or the last two big countries they say to be colonized by England and Europe and them. Arguably, though, people would say, "Oh, that's because they're right next to each other." Mm, yeah, but everything bends in from the mental to the physical, so they're right next to each other for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, so there's definitely something going on there. And then not only that, there's so many cultural similarities as well. Both indigenous cultures have very, very sacred practices around death, right? And a lot of cultures have sacred practices around death, but there's a certain degree of reverence, of importance placed on the dead in New Zealand and Australian indigenous cultures, which is your Maori people. And nowadays, it's actually considered an outdated term to call Australian indigenous peoples Aboriginal. That's actually considered outdated. They prefer the term either First Nations, or they would prefer just their tribe name. So depending on what people they are, because pre-European times, that wasn't even a thing. Like to group them all under one group, they were just people, and then they had their different tribes and their different families, and they all have their own separate cultures and beliefs, which have a similar kind of overarching theme, right? Which is connection to the land, or country, as the Aboriginal people will call it. And yeah, so they would rather be called by their individual country origin, which would be where I'm from. They have the Wurundjeri people, or Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. That's where I've grown up in Australia. And then in New Zealand, even Maori. Maori is actually more of a modern term. Maori is actually a term that was coined by European and Maori interacting. So when the Europeans and the Maori interacted, they asked, "What are you?" And then the Maori would say Maori. Maori is just another word to say original. So basically, it wasn't even a term to call the people. It was just a way to say that I'm the original person and you're not original, aka you're not from here. That's just like as simple as that. So now in modern day times, they will call themselves Maori, but pre-European times, it was just the same kind of concept. We were just known by each individual tribe, or iwi in Maori. And what's it called? There's no overarching term for Aboriginal tribes. They each have their own individual word, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not Aboriginal. I'm not First Nations, you know. But in Maori, we call it iwi. And actually, iwi is even a little bit more of a modern term. I don't know about I don't know about post-colonial, but iwi itself is a little bit more of a modern term. It was actually hapu, and hapu is actually the Māori word for when you're pregnant. So, but hapu was also the Māori word to describe each group of people. So each group was known as a hapu, and that would be your extended family in a sense. Anyways, moving on. Those are a little bit more similarities, right? A little bit more similarities. In terms of the languages and the culture, there's a few more similarities, not so much in the language sector between the indigenous peoples of each country, but in terms of the culture, there's a lot of similarities. But there's also similarities to other cultures who are in tune with nature. And I think that probably pertains to the fact that they're all in tune with nature, right? In some way, shape, or form. So they have that, or what the Europeans would term as paganism. If you haven't watched it, go check out my video. Paganism slash anti-witchcraft is racism. That's a really good video to watch if you want to learn a little bit about the kind of background between why they even call it paganism and why those terms are kind of considered derogatory and why there's a lot of negative stigma attached to them. It's actually based on colonialism. So the pagan term is a way to discredit, defame indigenous cultures by saying pagan and then describing those kind of practices as like witchcraft, and then like the whole witch hunt thing, like all of that is because you don't see what European person do you know like from history that was actually a witch other than myths and legends and stories. When it comes to indigenous people, that is our current reality. It's not a myth or a legend. Like the concept or the idea behind paganism and witchcraft, which in our cultures we wouldn't even call it witchcraft or paganism. That's just our culture. Like that's just the way. Like if you look at the practices, you'll be able to see it. You wouldn't even be able to unsee it after you see it like that. You'll be looking at the practices. You're like, this is literally what they're describing as witchcraft and paganism, and anything else is just a myth or a legend, and that's that. So people will be like, oh, there was witch hunts and blah blah blah. No, babes. All of that shit is based on colonialism and racism, exercising racism to help to overtake certain people's countries and to justify their guilt for wiping out or trying to wipe out entire groups of people because of their beliefs and their cultural systems. But that's besides the point. So, when it came to them being Australia and New Zealand as countries, as land masses being siblings, goes even deeper than that. You've got Australia, right? Australia is generally considered a very hot country all around. Obviously, you've got varying climates. You've got many different climates, same as New Zealand. You know, in New Zealand, you've got many different climates. You even have a desert in New Zealand, which is actually, I didn't even know that until like probably a couple years ago. But as a overall, Australia is like a desert country, and I think you know where I'm going with this. New Zealand is like a wet and cold kind of country as an overall. Obviously, there's differing climates, but overall, New Zealand is very wet and cold. Australia, very dry and hot. Okay, so you're starting to see like I really can't, I don't know, like I can't really chalk it up to anything other than these two land masses, these two countries must be siblings in some way, shape, or form, because the yin and yangness is like just, it's too uncanny, you know what I mean? And then like maybe we don't have to say siblings, you know, but this is just a way of kind of explaining what I'm kind of witnessing, you know, being from both, growing up in Australia and being born in New Zealand. So, you know, you don't have to say siblings, maybe they're husband and wife, you know, but either way, it's that yin and yang kind of energy, the two sides of the same coin, right? So, what else? What else? Let's go. I'm trying to think of anything else. That's a majority of the points that I was actually going through. Until I remember another one, I'll go deeper into that. But I'll just keep talking about whatever I want to talk about anyway in this video. We're 30 minutes in, okay. Interesting. So yeah, as well, kind of backtracking to the start of the video, and where I was talking about how I started my YouTube videos and how I was putting more of that practical fixed earth kind of quality, I've noticed as well that doing too much of that, putting too much energy and putting too much time into that fixated earth kind of quality, it stopped, or it's kind of veered me a little bit off my original objective and my original goal, which was, like, don't get me wrong, I never veered off fully, because I don't veer off fully, you know what I mean? Otherwise I wouldn't be making the video. Like, if I feel like I'm slightly out of alignment with my trajectory or my goal, I will just refrain from making a video in that moment, because why would I, if I'm not in the right space, you know what I mean? I've got to be in the right space mentally, spiritually, for me to actually make one of these. And then it's sort of slightly veered me off, where I was like, okay, looking at my videos and I was like, not fully feeling like I was fully doing what I originally had intended to do, which, if you don't know, my original intention to do this whole entire channel was because, well, one of the things, generally you're not supposed to share any of your rituals, but when it comes to this one, I feel like it's alright with this one. But originally I was surrounded by a whole bunch of people who were very, very, very different from the space that I wanted to be in. And still pretty much am. Don't get me wrong, I've moved steps closer. I've moved steps, maybe even leaps closer, dare I say, towards people who are more in alignment with my state of being that I want to be in, or that I'm in now. I'm already in it, you know what I mean? But back then I wanted to be in it. And really, that state of being was just me being more in tune with myself and being more in tune with the things that I love to do, the things that I like to experience in my life. So I was surrounded by a whole bunch of people that were into the stuff completely different than I was into. They didn't want to experience half the stuff that I wanted to experience in my life, all of that. So for me, in my mind, one of the main objectives for me even making this channel was I look like a scab boy. That is literally just my hairy gorilla ass. So one of the main concepts was, okay, if I'm going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of people that don't want to hear what I want to say, that don't want to do the stuff that I want to do, that don't want to be in the space that I want to be in, or whatever. And then also in my mind I was like, and I'm not gonna sit here and force and argue, because I spent like a long time trying to do that, and then I realized, what the fuck am I doing? Why would you argue and try and force someone to think the way that you think? That is like narc 101. Like, you're a narcissist, like, low-key, because why would you try and make someone else think and feel and be like you? Like don't get me wrong, there's certain ways that might be healthy, because everything has an equilibrium. But as a general kind of concept, when you're like, oh, like, people around me don't see this, people around me, they can't see this about blah blah blah, so I have to freaking constantly convince them and prove them, like, that kind of energy. You feel like you have to prove people, all of that stuff. Like, you know, I wasn't about to do that, because I realized how utterly wasteful that was. Not only is it a waste of my energy and time, it's a waste of their energy and time, and we both could be doing much more productive and beneficial things with our life, other than arguing about where you're at and where I'm at, and where you're not and where I'm not. You know what I mean? So it's like, just do what you got to do. Be where you want to be. and don't fucking, like, what the fuck. So yeah. And then also, even I started to notice as well, even the people that I was around that felt like they were more in line with what I wanted to be in tune with, or the space I wanted to be within, even those type of people were actually a lot further from that space than I had initially anticipated. So in my mind, I was like, okay, there's not really much I can do at this point in time if when it comes to like enacting and truly expressing my true state of being with other like-minded individuals, right? So obviously, best thing for you to do in those situations is to separate yourself as best as you can and spend as little time as possible with those people, because the more time you spend with them, you're just going to keep manifesting more time to spend with them, and then you're just going to keep being stuck in that same cycle of being like, I want to expand, I want to grow, I want to be surrounded by other people, but while still surrounding yourself with people that are not those other people that you want to be around. You know what I mean? So for me, I was like, okay, well, how can I, what's one of the best ways I can jump into that energy of being around those other people? I thought to myself, well, what's the difference between talking to a person and talking to a camera? Well, funny, I asked myself that because I realized the difference is, well, there's quite a few differences, but the main difference that I was thinking about, I was like, well, the camera can't really have an opinion. The camera doesn't really agree or disagree. So if anything, it's kind of like a neutral bystander. So in my mind, I was like, okay, if I sit there and talk to the camera, isn't that kind of the same as talking to a person, except if they're not a person? You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, let me manifest this. Let me actually create this. Because the more I talk in front of the camera, not only do I not feel like I'm wasting my time because nobody's going to listen, right? Plus, who gives a fuck who views my video or not? You know what I mean? Because I just filmed it on the camera anyway. So I'm just having fun. I'm enjoying myself, you know. That was my other main reason why I even started this, because I enjoyed it. I knew I was going to have fun doing it. Because I know I love talking. I know I also love teaching, because I just find myself teaching all the time. Like, I'll be sitting there having a normal, plain old conversation, and the next minute it goes into this whole fucking, like, thing about what I know, and then it just becomes me teaching people, and I'm like, I did not intend for it to be this way, but it just happens. It just literally happens. So I was like, why don't I just do that? Why can't I just do that in front of the camera? Because then I'm putting in the energy work, I'm putting in the time. And so therefore, I'm not ever going to have those situations like how I had to deal with people that weren't in alignment with me, that weren't in alignment with what I wanted to be and how I wanted to see my reality. I could just talk to the camera, and that will be the aligning thing. Don't mind me, guys. I just low-key, I was like, I heard this like kind of shifting. I was like, that kind of sounds like a snake here, so I'm not even gonna lie. So I had to check because my back door's open. I have a door in my room. I was like, don't tell me a snake just came in. But no, it was just the cat. He was just doing something. And yeah, when it came to, oh fuck, that's it. I'm starting to think maybe I shouldn't be doing videos when I'm yawning, but oh well. At the end of the day, I had the energy to do a video, so I'm gonna fucking use that energy. You know what I mean? Regardless of if I'm tired or not. But yeah, thought that'd be a perfect way for me to manifest all of that energy that I actually want to create in my reality without actually having to physically talk to anyone, physically go out. And albeit sounds a little bit lazy when I actually say it out loud, you know? But during that time, I kind of had that mindset as well, where I was like, okay, well, I still am not fully in this space, so how am I going to manifest the right kind of people if I'm not even in the space that I want to be in, or the people that I want to manifest? You know what I mean? So you've got to put yourself in the space first, and then manifest, and then jump into the physical and enact and be, and be able to see whatever you wanted. So yeah, that was the main reason why I even started this. One of the main reasons, and then among other things, like I said, I just enjoy this shit. So I noticed myself when I would get into that ego of like, oh, I've got to teach, or I've got to talk about like educational or things that always have a meaning and reasoning. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Sagittarius moon, so whatever I say and however I say it, it's usually going to have a meaning and reasoning, because that's just my initial reaction. My knee-jerk reaction is for something to have a meaning and reasoning behind it. Even things that are meaningless, So, but everything has a meaning and reasoning behind it. That's one thing that Sagittarius, suns, moons, maybe other signs that have Sagittarius in them, we get it. We know that everything has a meaning and reasoning behind it. Just a lot of people will be like, may get confused about the meaning and reasoning, and may make up a meaning and reasoning that actually has nothing to do with the actual meaning and reasoning behind it, which can be a benefit or a downfall, because babes, faith, belief, and imagination is one powerful fucking thing, okay? Well, three powerful things. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, well, I need to jump more into that space where I'm just talking, I'm just being in that space that I want to be in. And sometimes that won't always involve talking or saying the kind of topics that I typically think that I should say about. So, what's it called? It's really important for me to be aware of these kind of things, because the more things you're aware of as well, that's just going to help you to be more keen at noticing different changes, or when things aren't changing, Otherwise, you'll just kind of get stagnant when you're not really aware of that much, and your mind gets lazy, and then your body gets lazy, and then you start to become complacent, and then then you end up you'll get bored of shit real quick, or other people might watch your shit and then get bored of it real quick. All types of stuff. My hair's looking extra red today. I noticed that my hair is actually like a brown red, which fucking love it. No complaints here, mate. Though I do love the color black. But I'm all about the natural, mate. I'm all about the natural. And my hair is like a brownie red, and it goes even redder when I'm pissed off. But that was more back in the day when I used to get pissed off all the time. Nowadays I don't really get that pissed off. Though I will say I have been a little bit annoyed more than normal lately. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Because you can see that red tinge on the camera. You can actually see that red tinge. It almost looks similar to this red up here. What else? What else? Honestly, I can't really think of much else. That's pretty much the main concepts that I wanted to cover in this video. But I generally just wanted to say my videos are going to be a lot more free from now on. So going to be a lot more chill and relaxed, because I noticed the more that I chill and kind of relax and don't get so rigid about it, don't get so earth sign or air sign about it, that's when I can, like I said at the start of the video, I don't really need to say that because I feel like I've said it quite enough times already. But if you don't remember, you can skip right to the beginning of the video, and I'm pretty sure I would have said it within at least the first minute or two. So yeah, Australia, New Zealand, bloody sibling countries, like just freaking. Even the slang between Australia and New Zealand has always been very, very similar. You got like obviously some things that are not translated at all, but there's a lot of slang and there's a lot of overlap between the two languages because they're both English, you know what I mean? The main language, the colonized language, they're both English, but obviously they're kind of their own dialect. But there's a lot of overlap between them as well. And that also is probably due to like what they say, the relationship between the two countries with the Commonwealth and so on and so forth. But it's all coming from somewhere. Everything has a meaning and a reasoning behind it, regardless of if you can see it or not. I'm just really just wanted to bring this to the table. I also am curious if anyone's maybe from Australia, New Zealand, or just knows about these two countries in general. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it too. Maybe you might have another point to add on the similarities as well, because the similarities goes even deeper than that. Those are just kind of like surface level kind of similarities, but it just gives you an overview to see, okay, well, there's something going on here, like energetically, like on a spiritual and mental, energetic type of level. So it's just an interesting topic to bring to the table, I thought. Something different, something unique. I mean, for me, it's not really different because I think about that shit all the time, or shit like this in general. But, to my YouTube channel or even to online, because who the fuck talks like this? You know what I mean? I don't know people from Australia and New Zealand that would bring a topic like this. Most people from Australia and New Zealand are actually trying to distance themselves from associating with each other. Again, that's kind of sounds like fucking siblings to me. You know what I mean? So it's like a funny little thing going on there. But yeah, I had a few other things that I wanted to say in the video, but they seem to have just slipped my mind. They really seem to have slipped my mind. Oh, really? Actually, I just thought of that thing because I just made that post about my moringa, my mountain. My moringa is something that's traced back like through our family lineage, and they trace because in Māori culture they trace your family to the certain mountain, river, land, as well as waka. And a lot of Māori will even say waka, like, because a lot of Māori will be like, oh yeah, the waka is the waka, and it comes from like overseas. But in Māori culture, we never had that. We didn't have overseas or, but European came and they interpreted, like, for example, because in Māori culture, we say we came on waka from Hawaii. And now in Europeans' eyes, they're like, oh, these people, these people are from Hawaii, and they just called it Hawaii because of their like different dialect. But in Maori, Hawaii it's not a landmass. Hawaii is the heavens, basically. So in Maori culture, they're just trying to explain, and a lot of Maori, some Maori even today don't really realize this, but in Hawaii, they're saying we come from the mental, we come from the heavens, right? We come from the spiritual down to the physical. And that's why even in Maori culture, they'll use waka to describe not only a boat, but they also use waka to describe your mind state. So when people think a certain way, they'll say, I'm not on that waka. And all of this points to the kind of belief, but European mixed it with their beliefs. And now they say, oh, you descend from this physical waka and this physical landmass called Hawaii, which now Europeans say it's not Hawaii, we actually come from Taiwan or Asia or China or some shit like that. It's all the same shit. But Maori culture, we already know where we come from. Hawaii. We come from the mental, from the spiritual, down to the physical. And this is why we trace our whakapapa, our lineage, down to the river, the mountain, and the landmass. Because we didn't come from another landmass, another river, another mountain. Otherwise, we would trace our lineage to that landmass and that mountain and that, everything from that country. But we didn't. We said we came from a waka, from Hawaii, which was where the Atua, aka the gods, came from, which were just the heavenly beings, or the mental or the spiritual beings, and those are the origins. There's a point in why I said that. Yeah, that post that I was doing. The post that I was doing about being able to trace my lineage back to that mountain, that Maunga, and just having that connection in general, and really just like kind of having that deep sense of appreciation as well for like where I'm at now, even though I didn't grow up on that landmass, just the fact that I even have the honor and the privilege to know about my Maunga and about my culture, you know what I mean? This is a very, very important privilege. And it's something that a lot of people would take for granted. Even a lot of people who have culture and are connected to their culture might even take it for granted. But that's the difference as well. Like, when you have grown up without something your whole life, you appreciate it. And that's why when it comes to people coming from nothing, they're always going to be closer to that godly state, that appreciative, gratitude, and heavenly or Hawaii state of being. But yeah, I want to go deeper into that one actually. That whole Hawaii and Waka talk. I think it'll be a really interesting video to talk about. But at the same time, I don't want to talk too much about it because there's a lot of people that I know that just it wouldn't be received, So I want to talk about it in a way where it's something that I actually want to do, not something that I feel like is necessary because a whole bunch of people don't actually know that or don't think that way. Because I know a lot of Maori people, even European, who just like accept the whole story about us coming from Taiwan because it seems to line up with how we came from Hawaii. But it's like, bruh, no, none of that shit is true. None of that shit is true. Maori did not come from fucking overseas on boats and colonize New Zealand. No. That didn't happen, babes. That did not happen. Hawaii was never a landmass, was never a country. And I don't know what confused or what made people start to think otherwise. Like European programming type bullshit. That's all I can think of. All European programming type bullshit. So I don't want to stay in that program, you know what I mean? But yeah, I'll leave it at that, guys. And I'll see you guys for the next video. I don't know why I keep saying that. Like, bitch, just say peace. Like, not Pee Wee Herman. That's what that sounds like. A creep. Is that